Welcome to this meeting of the City of Tyler Planning and Zoning Commission. We're always happy to have our friends and neighbors come. It's open government. We're glad to have you here and listen to your comments. The first item on our agenda is roll call. Sheila?
Yes, sir. Pamela Phoenix.
Present.
Jimmy Reed.
Present.
Beth Whitney. Blair Swain.
Present.
John Landis.
Here.
Lloyd Nichols.
Here.
Commissioner Hudson.
Present. We have a quorum today. The Planning and Zoning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council. All items approved today will be heard by the City Council at its regular meeting on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, commencing at 9 a.m. If you received a notice for this meeting, you also received a notice for that City Council meeting. Meeting subdivision plats are approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission solely, unless there's a request for waiver of escrow fees or construction. Only the City Council makes financial decisions. If any item is denied, the applicant has 10 calendar days to file a written appeal with the Planning Department. The appeal will then be acted upon by the City Council. If you're here to speak for and against an item, please state your name and address for the record. Comments should be limited to 5 minutes or less, although extensions of time may be granted by the chair upon request. At the conclusion of this meeting, we'll have a workshop to plan for our next meeting. Those meetings, that workshop is open to the public, as are all our meetings, and it will be held in the Tyler Development Center across the street at 423 West Ferguson in the large conference room. Next item on our agenda is the minutes from the last meeting. Commissioners had an opportunity to review those minutes. Are there questions, corrections, additions? If not, would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from January 3rd, 2023.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve these minutes. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We've had from our last meeting, we've had a couple of items that were tabled from our last meeting, and we're going to deal with those first. Z22-069, and I need a motion to remove that item from the table.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we remove Z22-069 from the table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to remove this from the table. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Thrani, are you going to discuss this for us?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this.
Thank you. All right, Thrani.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and good afternoon to everyone present here today. This is a zone change request from R1D, single family attached and detached residential district, to PMF, planned multifamily with a site plan. This is a property that's located on Shiloh Road. This was tabled at the last meeting as we were waiting for the applicant to submit a site plan. Initially, when this zone change was requested, it was requested to RMF, a multifamily residential district, but it was recommended in the meeting that a planned multifamily with the site narrative or a site plan would be appropriate to address the concerns of the neighbors. Just looking at the surrounding property, to the north is commercial, and to the west is the multifamily, it's apartment homes, and to the south is PUR single family, and to the east is also single family R1D attached homes and some undeveloped lots as well in the area. The applicant this would be consistent, this request would be consistent with the future land use guide. This would identify the property as townhouse garden apartment, and that's the site plan that was submitted. The neighbors did request for a green belt to the south of the development, and that long area we can see in the west of the plan. They're dedicating a 300-foot green belt area, and also to the east they are dedicating a 25-foot green belt area, and also to the north and the east there's buffer area dedicated as well. They're requesting for 223 units with its 1 bed, 2 beds, and 3 bedroom units. The setbacks are 50 feet and farther than that as well. You can look at the site plan that's proposed. They are proposing more than adequate 15% landscaping required with the UDC, and parking also complies with the UDC. The applicant did point out that they did reach the HOA and the neighbors, and they did not receive any feedback or comments for the new proposed site plan. Out of the 36 notices that was sent, none was received in favor. 12 was received in opposition to the request with a 17.92%. And the main concerns were at that time it was for the drainage and also the green belt, the 100-foot green belt in the south, and also the green belt to the east. And applicant has indeed provided those, incorporated those changes in the site plan. All the departments have reviewed the application and anticipate no significant impact on the services and facilities. Staff has reviewed the request, and staff recommends approval of the site plan from PMF with site plan.
Thank you, Tharani. Any questions for City Staff?
So Tharani, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is that there was no additional feedback from the homeowners association in regards to the revised plan, but they still did not remove their protest. Is that correct?
Well, my understanding is they did reach out to the neighbors, but they did not get any comments back. So it's not that they had withdrawn their protest, but they didn't hear anything back from them.
Okay, but no protest has been withdrawn from the city of Tyler. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Tharani? We have some persons here who signed up to speak on this item, and it looks like the first one is Adam Reeves. Is Mr. Reeves here?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Adam Reeves with Tempest Development, 3930 Glade Road in Colleyville, Texas. Here on behalf of the applicant, Titus Land Holdings, that has put this case before you. Obviously, the main question I think that everybody had, you and HOA members, some in the audience, was what is this going to look like when it starts developing? So that's what the site plan is that we've developed. We've helped Titus Land Holdings with. I would say there were 5, what I understand, major questions, comments, concerns that y'all had, as well as the HOAs to the east and to the south of us. So I'll go through each one of those briefly, and if any of you all have questions, I'd be happy to answer at the end. The first, obviously, is the site plan. Prior, this was just a straight RMF zoning, going with all of those standard code requirements, zoning requirements. This site plan is now fairly defined, very defined for what can be expected down the road when this is constructed. A couple of highlights that I will push out in general. The idea is that we still want to base normal code under the RMF standards as we move forward through planning the plats and the engineering documents. But some of the adjustments that we made from the RMF that allows 24 units per acre max. This site has a 15-acre density, unit per acre density. Open space, I believe, is a 15% minimum requirement. This has over 50% remaining property as open space. And there was one comment about 3 tracks that effectively parallel the long southern finger. Those are not in discussion to be purchased or rolled into this development whatsoever. So that's not a point to be concerned about anymore. We have a 50-foot setback along Shallow Road. We want to make sure that as people are passing by, the general public, everything is going to be set fairly well back from the roadway, from the right-of-way, be difficult to see. You can see, obviously, further than that, that 50-foot is kind of in the middle. It's hard to see of that little open space dog park area at the northern edge. The buildings are obviously further back from there. The other second main comment that we had was on setbacks. So that's obviously the Shallow Road one. To the east with Shiloh Village, obviously concerned with those homes backing up to our property. So we've instituted a few different things. One, a 50-foot setback from that property line that effectively mirrors what the minimum setback is that those homes have to our property line. If you were to look at actually the northernmost property, there's a dimension there. From the back of that home to our 50-foot setback, there's 115 feet. The building that you see closest on the southeast side, that's additional 20 feet away. So that apartment at the nearest point is about 135 feet away from the nearest home on the back side. If you cut down to the middle, it's about 160 foot. If you cut down to the very southern point, it just gets further and further away from those properties. We also want to ensure that it's obviously a heavily treed site, that as much of that could remain as possible, that would still allow us to develop this as we needed to. So we've instituted that 25-foot green belt along that same eastern property to keep that fully vegetated and not get into that area whatsoever. Also with this site plan, you'll see that there's a point where that apartment gets a little bit closer, or I'll say the closest point, still 135, 140 feet away. But as you track south through the rest of the Shiloh Village, we're keeping that open as well. The reality is that might be used from an engineering standpoint, possibly to help with drainage or detention ponds or something in that manner. If that's not necessary in final design, the effect would be that we try to keep that open and natural as possible. And there's some large pine stands up there that would be very good to remain and look nice. There was a screening wall comment along that east side as well. What we're trying to do is take care of that through the 25-foot green belt and potentially more as that gets onto the development. If it's hard to tell here, there's some 5-foot contour lines on there as well. So from our property line, as you move back east to those homes, there's actually 20 foot of fall between the two of them. So our thinking is the reality of when 8-foot retaining walls are sitting up, that's not really going to do much. There's still going to be 12-foot vertical height from the top of that wall to where your homes and the pads set. So we're just trying to make it more natural and leave that wooded area. To the south, where Stonegate HOA is, I believe that it was a 100-foot request of keeping that buffer. What we did is they own that small out parcel that backs up to Biloxi, which is about a 250-foot wide strip as you go north to south. So we enclosed that entire 250-foot area and went an additional 50 feet to match what we're doing on the eastern property. So from there we get 300 feet of green belt. The intent is that will make it natural. Nothing will occur in that property. The reality is you continue tracking north. There's still quite a good space of land in that finger until you get to our parking lots and our apartment. We don't plan on really developing that here. We didn't think it in the green belt. The only reason being is if we need to get in there for anything to help with erosion, detention, drainage, something like that. We still have the ability to do that, possibly do some kind of nature trails through there. But as you can see in the site plan, there's no parking, there's no building structure whatsoever in that area too. Drainage, as I just mentioned, was the third major comment. I'll break it into two major focuses really based on those two HOAs. To the east, Shiloh Village, conveniently, they are upstream of us. So typically in a drainage situation from flooding, there's a lot more potential for that on a new development happening downstream rather than upstream. For both of these conditions, what I'll say is the in-game condition, we're still going to have to go through the engineering department review with your staff, doing studies that would need to be done and effectively prove that there's no impact negative either upstream or downstream to this property. From a practical standpoint, there's still that 20-foot elevation differential where the homes are to our property line. So the reality is if we were to do something to flood them, that would effectively flood the first 2 stories of the apartment building in that area. So it's a big concern for us not to do anything on them because that's going to directly materially impact our property. Moving south to Stonegate, I believe the overarching drainage concern was specific to Mud Creek Pond, the spillway outfall condition from that. And in 2020, when phase 2 of Shiloh Village was constructed, a storm pipe that outfalls there and gave them some erosion conditions or problems. I'll say there's a difference from our property. That specific location, I don't know the engineering or the plans specifically on that project, but just looking at it at a map, their outfall is pretty close to where the spillway outfall from Mud Creek Pond is. And so my assumption is any of those problems was just how similar or how close those locations were with the point discharge from that development as it moved downstream. Our development, it's going to effectively funnel to the center where our creek is. And that creek continues further downstream where it actually goes not to the exact same creek, but they join together downstream into one creek, upstream they split it into two. So the majority of all of our drainage is going to go to a different tributary. From a bird's eye differential, we're about 1,000 feet from that common property line north to where our development begins, and I'll say 750 feet back east to where one of those outfalls starts coming in. So all that to say, we have pretty good differential in distance from one location to the other, where I would not expect our impact to really track back up that secondary creek another 750 feet, 1,000 feet more to give them concern. So I think those are different situations, but again, I'll hinge on, we will be going back through the engineering process. Your staff will have a chance to check everything, vet everything, and we will be held to not impacting negatively any neighbors. Similar with erosion during construction, obviously will be enforced and I would expect inspected by the city. We're certainly our own private inspectors after rainfall events, making sure silt fencing and everything else is in place so none of that silt gets downstream. And from an erosion standpoint, after the fact, that really becomes a velocity issue of how much stormwater is in those creeks, and I think that's also something that gets vetted and confirmed through them, not just us, but your city staff checking that information. Traffic was another comment. One of the questions or suggestions was being to Biloxi. That's not very feasible. We're just looking at drainage and the creeks on our other southern property, so we still have the singular access to the north to Shiloh. It's a divided entry just for safeties. It's not really 2 entries, but there's a median divide, so if somebody is in an accident, fire service emergency still has at least a pseudo secondary roadway to come into free and clear. Shiloh is a minor arterial on your thoroughfare plan, so I think as staff has said, there's no issues with that or expectations of that traffic draw being a major concern on that roadway. Again, if there's further study or something that needs to be happening just to make sure that's entirely correct or defined, that could happen during the construction plan process as well. And then the final overarching comment was just one of crime. I think that comment probably comes up with any development new in an area regardless of what the ultimate use was. I don't have a very long-winded answer to what that would be. My only 2 comments are, one, this will be an apartment, this is a business that's going to own it. So if crime is built into this apartment complex, that's going to negatively impact the business and the operation of that apartment complex, which is going to drive people to not live there, which is the opposite of what an apartment complex wants to have happen. And 2, y'all know your city better than I do and what's going on, but we would just expect the Tyler Police Department to do a good job of helping out where necessary to the neighborhood. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have, or I'll sit and wait if anybody else presents or comments on it to respond to. But again, I think we've attempted to respond positively to the comments that we did here and ask for your approval today.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? Sir, we'll get to other comments. Let him finish, please.
I just had one question. The 25 feet vegetation that you said you're going to be sustaining on that east side, is it going to be closer to the residences or closest to?
It's going to start at our joint property line and come back west towards our building. So it'll be right on that fence line, on that common property line.
Okay.
Mr. Reeves, can you confirm the number of stories for the apartment buildings?
3 stories.
3 stories. Okay. I didn't see that on the site plan. Maybe it was there and I missed it. But
we could add that to the city council if that's a question or a confirmation. to see.
Mr. Reeves, did you get, so have you received any additional feedback as well, like this, just like what I asked Ronnie, any additional feedback about your site plan from the homeowner associations?
We have not.
Okay.
Kyle Bryant with Titus Lane Holdings, the applicant, has reached out, shared the site plan that we've developed with each of those folks. Let them know that we're happy to have a phone call conversation to walk through anything, and as far as I'm aware, I have not heard back from those folks.
Okay. All right. And please confirm your site is, you're saying topographically your site is 20 foot lower from the beginning of the east property line to essentially where the new first or closest east structure would be. Is that correct?
Yes, so from our common eastern property line, we start that at 0.
That's 0.
Go back to the existing homes to the east of us, there's 20 foot of rise.
Okay, common property line to their structures, to their homes.
And then as the whole site continues to the southwest with the natural drainage, it continues stepping down.
Okay. So y'all would effectively be even lower than that, possibly, depending on what your berms and swales look like for the drainage.
Correct.
Okay.
At least 2 feet below to where the main apartment would sit. As you go back to shallow across the creek, it obviously starts coming back up again. But as it continues to the southwest, the natural patterns that go down.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can we go back to the site plan? And since Commissioner Reed just brought this issue up, you said 3 stories is your max height?
Yes.
Are there any of those 3-story units on the boundaries or the interior, or is there a specific place that the 3 stories are located, or are they just spotted?
This is set up as all of them.
Oh, all of them are 3 stories. Okay, and you have 100 feet setbacks on west, because residences are on the west and the east.
So on the west side, we're basically following, this is where we kind of fall back to your standard code requirements, and so we have a 10-foot buffer
Gotcha.
on there. That's another multifamily apartment complex immediately to our west. So
Okay, gotcha.
the major setbacks are to the east, where we've done the 25-foot redevelop, the 50-foot building setback, and then that building is pushed another 20 feet at its nearest location off of there, in the midpoint about 160 feet. And then the southern location, that's a full 300-foot redeveloped setback that we put in.
Gotcha.
And again, the reality of that finger, there's not going to be structures or parking or buildings there, so that from our southern point to where the match line on the right side of the site plan picture is about 1,000 feet, so that'll effectively be
Enough
undisturbed.
space.
Certainly the southern will be completely undisturbed and untouched. The next portion is really only be touched if it helps with drainage conditions, detention, or utilities. We would have to make sure we're not causing a detrimental impact to anyone else. And then even in that case, it's going to be, ground level and below work that we do.
My last question, Mr. Reeves. Any intentionality with window placement on your units as they abut Shiloh Village at all?
No, so we've developed this. There's not an architect on board that's done full renderings or set up what that's going to look like.
Okay.
So that's kind of step one is getting through this process. We'll go through those full renderings. That's the next step of plans, architectural plans, engineering plans. But I would envision, a typical new apartment complex, and that's what it's going to look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have one more question. Given the terrain that we've talked about on that southeast portion, if someone that lives in one of those homes that's the closest to that southeast structure, they walk out on their back porch and they look out, do they see the top story?
So, simplistically, say each one of those stories is going to be about 10 foot high. So the top of that apartment, the 3 stories, is going to be 30 to 35 feet. Their elevation difference is 20 feet, simplistically, from property line back. And then as we go over another 2 to 4 feet, so say there's a 25-foot differential, and then that from a common elevation, and that apartment will be 30 or 35 feet. So from a sight line, there might be, from my perspective, it would be like you would see maybe the top level and the roof. But that's where, as much as possible, we tend to keep that vegetation and the trees there. Those are all They can speak much more clearly to it, but there's certainly some very tall trees in that area that I think will do a very good job of screening the majority of that.
Any other questions from Mr. Reeves? Thank you for your time and presence. There's a gentleman in the back. He's eager to speak. Would you come to the mic?
I have a question for him.
Would you come to the microphone, please, sir?
Okay, I'm a retired professional engineer, and I live in Shiloh Village.
Would you just state your name and address for the record, please?
James F. Richardson, Jr.
Okay.
5041 Shiloh Village Drive.
Sorry.
And my concern is on the rerouting our property line is, and there's a small retaining wall, you'll right about that out, and I don't know how far it's going. And got comments here, so I'm not pleased with the hook in there because it's going to take out about 4 or 5 homes. And they'll have to be condemned. And this is an ongoing thing.
Thank you for your
That's my thank you very much.
thank you for your time and presence. There are several people who've signed up to speak on this item. Deborah Scott. Is Ms. Scott here?
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Scott. I reside at 5017 Shiloh Village Drive. And I appreciate the questions that you've asked Mr. Reeves. It shows that you are listening to our concerns as residents. A lot of my opposition is for me personally, is aesthetics. I appreciate that sense of solitude and quiet that I get when I enter Village Drive, Shiloh Village. And the greenbelt was a big selling point for me when I looked at my home to purchase. Some of the other concerns that have been mentioned, I agree with. Shiloh Road is a 3-lane road. It's already, it can be taxing at times to try and turn west on Shiloh to get towards Broadway or some of the other businesses. With that, I can hear Paluxy frequently, and sometimes Shiloh Road if I have the back door open, and noise level. I've always felt that the greenbelt provided a great buffer for some of that noise and activity that's been going on. And the sense of relaxation that I get when I look at that greenbelt is just immeasurable. I mean, it gives me quality of retirement life, and I appreciate that you do hear what we're saying. And you know, they have 7 buildings listed here, planned here. If they would eliminate that 7th building that's backing up to our backyards, they'd still have plenty of residence rooms for everyone else, and we wouldn't be so jammed in. I mean, we don't need to cram cement into every single space that's available. But I do appreciate that Tyler is growing and that you want to encourage business and residents coming here. Without growth, you know, we flounder. So that's all I have to say.
Ms. Scott, thank you for your time and presence. Any questions for Ms. Scott?
Ms. Scott, where do you reside as it relates to this?
I'm the second one in from the far north end.
On the perimeter, so you were one of the second red?
Yes, the second red.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm about as close to that proposed building as anybody is.
Thank you, Ms. Scott.
Thank you again. Thank you for your time and presence. I'll also have Patricia Pelche.
Thank you for your time. My name is Patricia Pelletier. I'm at 5053 Shallow Village Drive.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. There's another name in town.
Yes. My concern is, when I bought my place, like everybody else, we were assured that was a green belt back there. And because of the terrain, it would not be developed. Number one. Number two, the traffic on Shiloh we're at the bottom of the hill. So it gets pretty fast through there. And people come screaming over both sides of the hill. And you can't see the bottom when you're coming over the top. So traffic is a concern. I've never walked back there, so I don't know the terrain, except that with the trees and stuff, there's a lot of old trees back there. So they're talking about having, all these beautiful trees shielding our view. These trees have not been maintained. And since I've lived there for 6 years now, and some of these trees are falling down because of the erosion. So, I'm not a big fan, and I'm sorry. I understand growth is required. I totally understand that, and I don't want to be selfish about this whole thing. But to have what we pay for our places, and then to have somebody be able to look into my backyard, just really jacks my jaw. It was not what we were promised when we moved in there. So that's my concern. Got the erosion going on, which if any of you have looked to the back of our property, it's a mess back there. And I can't see how adding construction to this area is going to make it any better or can be improved. Anyways, that's all I have to say.
Well, again, thank you for your time and presence and your comments. Any questions for
Ms. Palatia, where do you reside in regards to the subject property?
I am in the middle. I am right at the end of the retaining wall to the green belt.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I'm not sure where the retaining wall is and the green belt is. Is there any way you can show me on this map, if possible?
This is kind of hard to read. Okay, I'm past the red. Yes.
You're okay. You're further down there. Okay.
Yes, and also we did not get, after this came out, the drawings came out, we were not contacted again for any input. I was not.
Okay.
Maybe the HOA was, but I was not.
Okay. Ms. one more question. Sorry, Ms. Palatia. In regards to the drainage aspects, has your homeowners association done any work to try to fix any of that? That's really outside of our purview, but I would say starting there first and trying to or with the developer or something. I know drainage has now been talked about quite a few times, and it's in a lot of our notes and a lot of the letters. But starting there would be a great place. So.
Yes, our HOA has addressed it with both management companies and with the owners who built the places.
Okay.
It's an ongoing problem. It's not addressed.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Peltier, for the record, can you just state your address?
5053 Shadow Village Drive.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you again.
Thank you for your time.
I also have a report from Justin Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins.
Commissioners, thank you. Justin Jenkins, 5011 Shallow Village Drive. And since you got this one up, I am the furthest north red spot here.
You're next to Miss Scott.
Yes. On the north side of Scott. I do have a question. If you go back, actually. These 3 lots here, these are 3 that are no longer a part of. So do you have a site plan that overlays what you have here to show exactly where this is located on this, how this is going to set.
It's hard to see on this screen, but on the right side, between basically on your property where your house is, you see 2 or 3 little horizontal left to right lines.
Correct.
The right side of that middle line is the back of the old homes. So I will see.
I see that, but if you go back, so that
and as you track south, there's other lot lines that you can see on that right side. Maybe give
no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is like you could go back to this here, so the green here obviously is the laid out, and then this would just fit directly in.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah, that is.
Mr. Reeves, I wonder if you could just step to the microphone to make sure everybody understands the conversation.
So you just slide this corner in right there.
That's correct. Yeah. So this corner, this is a city
corner there.
Zoning graphic, CAD graphic. That's exactly right. That grade is exactly where our site plan is specific on.
Okay.
And that's where you can see those lot lines. So
Correct.
more or less where there's the 2 gray lots in between, that would be basically right in that same corner.
Correct. Okay.
So yeah, from Shiloh Village to our property, there's 5 or 6 lots that do back up to our property. Everybody else remaining south will be in those previously discussed tracks that are now a little bit off the table. So we have, not to say somebody won't try and develop in the future, but we have no plans to be.
There's nothing, because that was the question that was there last time. Was that those tracks were also being sought after
They are not included in this whatsoever. Yep. So that, until someone other than us might come in and do something there, that's good. Well, we cannot touch that property and do anything, so we will not.
Well, essentially, if you do what you're going to plan on doing here, those 3 are landlocked and we'll never be able to get access to them.
It makes it more difficult.
Completely landlocked.
There's I guess that drive that goes to the southeast of y'all.
That's actually, that is a road that the developers put in, but at that point, that was just basically an access point for staging equipment and stuff like that while they were building, because it did help with drainage and everything that was, whenever they built all those houses back there, there was a deal that the city had to come back in, the developers went back, had to redo a whole lot, as Buck stated earlier. It did show some things on that side, so they put that there to help slow down the watershed that came off of the trailer park that's to our east that flowed through that way to help control it out. Correct.
Mr. Jenkins, did you have a question at all? Or we appreciate what you're saying.
No, I did. I was asking, my main question was asking about those 3 lots that are there, and then to asking the state that, with the elevation change and the height of the 3-story, we're going to be eye to eye with those apartment complexes. As especially with the 3rd story being built, we're going to be looking just like you and I are here. Yes, there's going to be a valley between the 2, but we're still going to be looking eye to eye, and that will be blocking that side view.
Mr. Jenkins, thank you for your time and testimony. Any other questions from Mr. Jenkins?
I do have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When you say eye to eye, do you mean on the ground level or the 3rd story?
No, sir. So we, like was stated, from the property line, that's going to be a common line, to where my house sits, there is probably a 15-foot change in elevation. As you move into that property, as it goes up, we will be more so eye to eye. Yes, it will be a valley between the 2 of us, but we will be set eye to eye.
Okay.
Again, thank you for your time and testimony. Any other questions, Mr. Jenkins? Fine, thank you. Those are the only cards I have of people who've signed up to speak. Are there other persons here who would like to speak on this matter for or against?
Could I say,
Mr. Reeves, if you I'll give you a few minutes to close.
very, very.
I have a couple questions for him, if
So the drainage question that the first gentleman had mentioned, the curvature through the center of the property, that is the existing creekway that exists today. So we're not doing any realignment or any adjustment of that creek. We're attempting to honor that as much as possible and just build on the east and the west sides of that. So I'm not familiar with the erosion problems that historically may have happened in the Shiloh Village development. We are not at that stage of this development, but what will be required as this progresses forward will be a geotechnical report that will give engineering consultants all of the information they would need. If there's structural engineers that are involved, there will be obviously with the buildings. If there's walls or something else that needs to be done, that will all be categorized in that geotech report, which would take place during the engineering construction plan process. The city would be able to see all that information. Obviously, it's a known concern, so I would expect staff to be pretty firm in asking those questions when we get to that point. But yeah, we're not adjusting anything that's not naturally there today. We're trying to leave as much as possible in the condition it's in.
Mr. Reeves, I think Mr. Reed may have a...
Yes, thanks. So it appears that on the east, on your east boundary, that it's fairly flat from your east boundary to that furthest west structure. That's kind of what I can gather currently. Is that true?
You're on the east side of the creek?
I'm on the east. Let's see. No, your east property line and the furthest west building. That corner that's closest to Mr. Jenkins and Miss Scott. So from there over to your east boundary. Okay. Is that fair? Do you know whether that?
Flat. I would say across that swath.
And we don't want to get too technical in it, but
at least two sets of contours. So
sure.
4 feet interior to our site. That's lower than the property line.
Okay.
And that property line, it's hard to see on this. But
sure. And these are 5-foot contours.
5-foot contours.
Okay.
So if you count them, that gets about 20 feet up to where the pads of the homes sit existing.
Mr. Reeves, what would be the impact of increasing the unobstructed buffer in that section as you abut Shiloh Village? So instead of 25 and then 50, if it was all 50 as you abut.
Push it through there. I think we could do that from basically where the building portion is up against where the homes, say the homes against Shiloh Village, from that portion where the first home goes down. We could expand that to 50 feet in that area.
Yeah, where Miss Scott lives, she's the furthest north.
Right. So.
No. So down a little bit.
We'll remove that parking if we have a roadway and parking on the lower side. Across the creek. So say more or less where this last parking stall is.
Yes.
More or less where that label 50 foot is in this general location. We're amenable to making this whole step the 25 to the 50 foot greenbelt building setback.
Okay. Well, so you have a 50-foot building setback, but 25-foot greenbelt. And what I'm asking is, would you be opposed to doing a 50-foot greenbelt?
That's what I'm saying. For that stretch from roughly
yes,
depending on how the parking fits, with some buffer for that to construct. From that point to that southeast corner, we could shift that 25-foot greenbelt to the 50-foot.
Okay.
So that's just one.
So it's a single greenbelt, undisturbed.
Correct. And then double the amount of vegetation that hopefully should stay there to mitigate that concern of view.
For the line of sight.
Okay. And we can make that adjustment, assuming this goes forward with approval with the city council's submission. We can do that very quickly.
Okay.
Along with that, this is a question for Kyle. That's really my big concern if this was to be approved. Is I just think it's respectful of the current homeowners if they walk out their back porch that they not be able to see anyone looking back at them. So can we either in the winter leaves are gone and you can see through trees oftentimes, and so is there anything that we can do to say no windows on that backside, or maybe decrease it by a story to completely eliminate just the physical ability for neighbors to see each other in the back?
I think that would be tough from our view, with the area that we're not developing full in the finger, and then that whole quadrant on that eastern side. Our density is a pretty good level for us.
And I'm just talking about that building.
And I know, if we were being, I won't say hyper-aggressive, but more aggressive with the site plan,
right?
We probably could have fit 2 apartment buildings on that eastern corner.
Right.
It would have required us to reroute the sanitary sewer line, which my expectation is that's a not uncommon thing that would need to be done. So I think from our standpoint, we're trying to keep a good portion of that area natural as it is, and we're happy to keep that green belt. But with the loss of the density from utilizing the rest of that area, I think we need to keep that right now with the 3-story. We have, on gross acreage, we're really 50% positive in open space on this.
Are there any other options to remedy that issue?
If the building was turned, to where it was, north to south, rather than being cocked like this, like saying the end of the building not having any windows or anything like that, that could be an option. But because it's articulated on a 45, it makes it difficult to do anything with windows or aesthetics or fencing or screening other than the natural untouched buffer yard.
It appears to me that you have, as you go further south, that there's more. Yeah, I think maybe they can also save more trees through that area and have a green belt that's more of a triangle through there.
Right.
Just that closest corner, it does look like that closest corner is kind of what you're talking about. That's the corner of the structure.
Yeah.
And not so much the rear. I think limited windows could get into, or could have an impact on just the building code and all those other requirements for that. We've had examples, not with residential, but with commercial structures that the windows facing that way can be higher up, so they're like 6 feet on the backside and not
like a high transom.
Yeah, a higher window on those, but for residential, I don't know if that's a possibility. So, I think the applicant's asking, or they've already indicated that they can leave more green belt there, and maybe also show more green belt as you go south in that corner, because I think they plan to leave that undisturbed as it is anyway. So.
Can you tell me one more time? So from the closest point from the back of the second home there to the corner of that structure, what is that? I can't read what that.
So
and then 20 feet.
So it's a total of 175.
about 100. The longest line that you see there is 115 feet.
Can you point at it, please?
From back of existing home to setback that we have. And then the corner is another, say, 20 feet additional, so 135 feet at that point. And then as that continues south, which I guess in the orientation of the windows coming to the southeast, say, that distance gets further and further. At the midpoint, it's 160 feet. And then I haven't measured the southernmost point, but I would imagine that's at least another 30 feet over, so 190, closer to 200 feet by the time we get to that southern edge.
Okay. Mr. Reeves, but is it likely that you're going to have to do detention on that southeast corner, or really you don't know because you haven't done the topographical map and engineering?
Right.
Yeah,
It's early to say.
Okay.
Maybe what we could do on the third story, say the northeastern quadrant, we could look at reducing that or maxing that into 2-story.
Right. If I could, we're getting pretty speculative here, and I do appreciate this dialogue, and some of these questions can be resolved in discussion with city staff.
Sorry.
Or that would be my view.
So would we need to table this?
Are there other persons here who would like to speak on this item for or against? Yes, ma'am. There's a lady in the back. Yes, ma'am. State your name and address for the record.
Lauren Sorrells, 5032 Charlotte Village Drive. And I'm the third unit that is closest to this development. First is Mr. Jenkins, then Ms. Scott, and then me. And we keep flipping back and forth with greenbelt widths and what's going to be there. I appreciate your remarks greatly. 50 feet, if that's what it is. You know, we've gone 25, 50, and then they talk about 150, so I know we're in different areas probably. But 50 feet is not very far. And like the lady that spoke earlier, we're mostly retired people. We bought this. One of the big reasons was this area that we all thought would never be developed. We were told by numerous people that it would not be because of the terrain. And I just ask that you consider, I know we need development, we need places for people to live, but don't destroy our quality of life and our property values. You know, we pay considerable as retired people for these properties. And if we're sitting there looking into the back, you know, we can see on Biloxi, I think it's Stonegate, the apartments up there, you know, you can see the lights there, you know, but it's far enough away. But, you know, 50 feet to my back door, my back deck, where I enjoy sitting, looking at the greenery, that's not far enough.
How much would be far enough for you?
I think it ought to be a football field. At least. You know, like Debbie said, I believe, what someone said, eliminate that building that's closest to us. There's none of the rest of this that's that close to Shiloh Village at all. But that thing is...
So Ronnie, which building is that? She's, because you keep...
The one closest to our house.
Okay.
Southeast.
Southeast.
You know, it's stuck right in our back patios.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Any questions from Ms. Sorrells? Yeah, thank you for...
I do appreciate you considering our property values as you develop.
Are there others who would like to speak on this item for or against? Any questions, further questions from Mr. Reed?
Man just raised his hand.
Oh, yes. Please come to the microphone. state
My name is Adrian Fadden, F-R-Y-L-I-N-G. I live in Shiloh Village, and this proposed build is going to cause some real violation for the natural, I guess you'd say, neutrality of the drainage in that area. Now, so far we have I guess you'd say, a creek down in the bottom of this system, and it's pretty much neutral. I walked that creek where I could get to it, and there's not a lot of washing from the side. There's the main water track. And if you do what you're doing here, every square foot of either roof, garage roof, or roadway, every square foot is going to cause an amount of, I guess you would say, water into that creek. Right now, it absorbs the soil, the trees and the brush use it up, and it's pretty much neutral. Now, that's going to load that creek up not only in the front part of that build, but also all the way back to the lake, which is behind Shiloh Village. So I think it's a significant violation of that water area, and I'm sure that it'll not only cause additional eroding on that natural creek, but it'll also load the dam up at the far end of where it leaves the property. And the other problem I have is this bill is proposing to put 400 vehicles on the Shiloh Village over time when the build is complete. And it is entering Shiloh Village at a dangerous point. It's midway of that hill, and that hill, both for going into that and coming out of that, would almost be a safety hazard. So those are the two concerns that I have.
Thank you for your presence and your comments. Are any questions for this gentleman? Are there others? Well, we've expended quite a lot of time on this item, which is appropriate. It's important. Any comments from commissioners?
I have a recommendation, or however we should do this, but my recommendation would be to remove this southeastern building completely and move to a motion to vote.
And I would recommend that we table this for 30 days for the applicant to get with the city and make a determination if they're able to remove that building or give more setbacks or something, because I just don't think it's ready.
Pamela, let's deal with the first motion. Mr. Keene, can we accept a contingent motion as Mr. Swaim has offered?
Yes, sir. The commission can, because you're recommending a change to the site plan itself. So you're conditioning your approval on that change being made by the city council. It ultimately will be up to the city council, but you can make that recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Every lawyer needs a lawyer. Mr. Swaim has a motion, which, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is to approve this proposal with the condition of removing the single building.
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion? Or if not, the motion dies for want of a second. Is there another motion?
I move that we table Z22-069 for 30 days.
The new motion is to table this item for 30 days. Is there a second?
Conditionally second. And I want to say that, Mr. Riggs, I believe you've done a good job so far explaining what it is that y'all are interested in doing. But I think there's a piece that's missing, and that is the intentional piece with the neighbors. And so I second that for 30 days, knowing and hoping, with the hope that there would be a consensus that would be made specifically with the homeowners association in some form or fashion. So second.
Motion's been made and seconded to table this item for 30 days. Is there further discussion?
Can we also, that stipulation that Commissioner Reed made about the 50 feet green belt?
If you're going to make that motion, let's back up.
We need to revise the motion.
I kind of think that'll probably take care of itself within the discussions.
Within the discussion, okay. All right.
Good thinking, Barry.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that was good.
Any further discussion?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. We're in the middle of the vote. Let's take a vote.
Okay.
I can try to help. I'm happy to remove it.
Don't go away.
All right, so table 30 days, we need to vote?
Yeah.
With the condition that...
Yeah, a motion's been made and seconded to table this item for 30 days. This is the second or third time we've dealt with this item. We may deal with it some more. That's why we're here. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks for your time and presence. The next item is also one that was tabled from our last. Lloyd, come join us. Next item is also one that was tabled from our last meeting, and I hope this is right, Z22074 David Lake. Is that right, Ryan?
We need to remove from the table.
Oh yeah, we need to remove this item from the table before Tharani speaks. Thank you. Is there a motion to remove this item from the table?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we remove Z22-074 from the table.
Second. Motion been made and seconded to remove this item from the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Tharani?
This is a zone change request from R1A Single Family Residential District and C1 Light Commercial District to PCD Planned Commercial District with the site plan. This is a property that's located east of the southeast intersection of University Boulevard and Old Omen Road. This item was tabled in the last meeting as we had not received an updated site plan at that time. We still have not received an updated site plan that shows us how it will comply with the UT Tyler Area Development Plan, as this location is in that area development plan, and it proposes it as a potential UT Tyler expansion. Since the applicant has not communicated back with us and given us any updated site plan or talked to us about it, at this time, the staff recommends denial of this zone change from R1A and C1 to PCD.
Thank you, Thrani. Any questions for city staff? If not, Mr. Lake, you're here to make any comments?
Mr. President, to show my support for it.
Okay. I don't have any other indication if people want to speak. Are the persons here who'd like to speak on this item for or against? Okay, so the recommendation from city staff is to table for
Deny.
Deny. Any discussion?
Will you just repeat one more time real quick why this now? I'm sorry.
Because we have not received any updated site plan that shows how it will comply with the area development plan. And also the site plan that we received is not complete, so the staff has not made a full review of the request.
Okay, so there have been, Ronnie, there have been staff comments that have been made back to the applicant. The applicant has not responded to the staff comments.
Yes.
Essentially, that's what's going on.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a procedural deal. It sounds like, and no communication either.
Not to our knowledge that we've had any feedback. So, with this being a zone change, not just a site plan, but a zone change to allow for the intent is to allow for or reconstruct the convenience store and the gas station on the corner, and to allow for a self-storage facility on the property, which is a C2 use, C2 zoning. It's allowed in PCD, but it's allowed it's permitted in PCD if the site plan is or essentially the PCD allows it. And so at this point, when we started the conversation with the applicant or the proposed developer, that we made them aware that it's in the University of Woods district, and that there are recommendations for this area to be institutional, which require that the applicant or the developer, the ultimate developer, be able to explain why the proposed update in the plan to go from proposed institutional uses to what would essentially be the general commercial or more intense commercial use. At this point, the applicant hasn't done that, or the applicant team, because I know the owners here, but the I guess the buyer or the developer to this date as of now has not demonstrated why the zone change is needed, or why it's in conformance with the UDC and in conformance with the area development plan's recommendations. And so at this point, staff will recommend denial. And once the applicant if they have another plan, or they will come back and reapply for something that they can demonstrate is compliant with all the standards or all the recommendations, then they can do that.
Okay.
All right, I believe where we are is that the staff has made a recommendation to deny this item. Are there persons here who would like to speak on this item for or against? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we deny Z22-074.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to deny this item. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item's denied. That brings us to, it looks like it's PD 23002 NSMF Partners. Is that correct, Ronnie?
Yes. This is a request for a site plan amendment for PMF, which is Planned Multifamily District. This is a property that's located on the southwest intersection of Roy Road and Villa Rosa Way. The applicant is requesting the amendment to change the fencing requirement that is in the current PMF site plan from 8-foot tall brick fence to 6-foot tall wooden fence along the south and to the west, and that's adjacent to the wind farms that you can see. Looking at the surrounding property zoning, the property to the north is zoned PMF and AG, and PMF is developed with duplexes that is a part of the Villa Rosa subdivision. And the property, the AG is a single-family home, and the properties to the west and south is single-family homes. It's a wind farm subdivision. And the properties to the east is the commercial, developed with commercial uses. Looking at the future land use guide, this will be inconsistent with the future land use guide as it shows it as townhome garden development. And that's the aerial view. That's the site plan that's being proposed, showing the 6-foot tall wooden fence along the south and to the west. There it is. Those two. Going back to some history of this property, in 2015, when those duplexes were developed, when it came for a zone change, it was conditioned on adjacent to the wind farms, there be a 12-foot brick fence that is 8 foot, and it was proposed by the developer at that time. They came up with the solution because there was quite a bit of opposition from the neighbors. So they proposed that 8-foot tall brick fence. Just to be clear about that. I'm also going to talk about some UDC requirements. UDC in between, let me go back to the zoning districts. In between the PMF and then the R1B to the kind of R1B that is PUR to the west, UDC requires a type A buffer yard. So if they were to propose anything right now, we need a minimum of type A, and I can read as per the UDC, it requires a 6-foot screening wall constructed of brick, stone, reinforced concrete, or similar two-sided masonry materials. So if they were to propose this today, we need at least a type A buffer yard that requires this, or a wooden fence may be used as long as there's a continuous masonry wall on a concrete footer that's at least 1 foot, installed also with the 5-foot buffer yard. So UDC has that type of requirement, and at this time, whatever they're proposing, the 6-foot wooden fence does not meet the UDC type A buffer yard standards. Out of the 22 notices that was sent, 2 was received in favor and 13 was received in opposition to the request with the 36.57 protest calculation. This would require a three-fourths majority vote of the City Council in order to get this zone change, the PMF amendment approved. Also, I would like to point out that the opposition had mentioned that they were promised an 8-foot wall using the proposal of the PMF for duplexes. And the HOA for the wind farms estates also sent us a protest letter saying that this will reverse the agreement that they had with the wind farms that was made at that time. Staff has reviewed the request and and it does not meet all the approval criteria, so it's inconsistent with the approval criteria, and staff does recommend a denial of this PMF site plan amendment.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan? All right, are there persons here who'd like to speak on this item? Mr. Nix.
Chairman, Commissioners, John Nix, 1515 Jeff Davis Drive, Tyler, Texas. I'm here wearing a couple hats. I'm actually president of Wind Estates HOA, and I still own a few lots that back up to this, and thank you for the Ronnie's historical retelling there. As she stated, this was what the developer brought as their solution for the concerns, and they had complete, in that point, everybody that surrounded them was against it on all sides, so they had pretty significant, so they did a lot of work to their credit, and got all of their, basically everybody that was against it removed, and this law was part of those discussions. And that was done 2015, and so most of these, all the houses except for two lots on the south end have been developed with this understanding and this in place. And I think we're up to 4 or 5 houses that have been built recently on the western line. All those were built with that understanding as well. And so we're just against it. This was something that was proposed by the developer, and it's what was agreed to by everybody. And here, that's why it was put on the site plan, so that we wouldn't be having this discussion 8 years later. But here we are. And anyway, we just asked that you go with the P&Z's recommendation. So, any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Nix. Any questions from Mr. Nix?
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time and presence. It looks like I have a Chris Dumas. Is that Mr. Dumas? Yes, sir. It looks like you're here to speak.
I was here to answer questions regarding the whole subdivision.
Okay. If you're, let the record show that Chris Dumas, 12770 Cimarron Path, San Antonio is here, available for questions. Is that correct?
But he's here for a plat.
Okay.
We'll come back.
It looks like, yeah, it looks like you're on the plat. Are there other persons here who would like to speak on the item? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim Dyson on behalf of the developer.
I know you're from out of town, or maybe you don't know me, but I am not now, nor have I ever been the mayor of the city of Tyler, and I never will be. But I sit in the mayor's chair, so it's easy to be confused.
On that too.
He deserves much more.
He definitely does. He does.
I apologize.
That's okay. It's no. I just don't want Mr. Warren to be confused.
Tim Lystrom on behalf of the developer right out of Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. I want to make it clear that first off, we were not the original developer on this site. We purchased this site in January of last year, 2022. And we bought the existing units with the intent to develop these additional units. So I think the biggest thing to note, there's a bit of opposition, we understand, but when this was made, none of those homes around this were developed, correct? And so this was a big, there were wind farms was just getting started and nothing was there. Now a lot of these homes surrounding are built, and there are already perimeter fences in place. There are 6-foot wooden fences in between the property. So what people are asking us to do, or these folks have to come in and tear their current fences down for us to build an 8-foot, privacy masonry fence on the boundary line. We're not going to build it on our property. It's going to be on the boundary line of the properties. So we have to, in essence, come down and they have to tear down their existing fence for us to come back and build an 8-foot masonry fence. We have talked to a number of the homeowners, and we have others that can support Monarch Homes back to they own a majority of those lots on the western boundary of the property. And they basically, those homes are built and they're probably getting very close to their certificate of occupancy. They left the back fence open because he's in support of us coming in, putting in a 6-foot wooden fence. And he's waiting to see if we can put the fence in. We said we pay for the entire wooden fence in the back. And he's perfectly, Monarch Homes, I believe, we have support from them in favor of putting a wooden fence there. Those yards, if you've seen those lots and yards are so small that if you put an 8-foot masonry fence in the back of your yard, it's going to look like a prison in the back of these yards. There's 20-some feet from their end of their house to the end of the house. The fence is higher than where their roof line starts. And aside from that, we understand it was a former development agreement that this developer made. But again, the fences are already in place in the majority of the places you're asking that currently we have to go to these homeowners tear down their fence for us to build another fence on top of it. It does, and at the same time, Mr. Nix spoke in opposition, but Mr. Nix is building townhome units, duplex units, just like this, back into residential units, and has put a 6-foot wooden fence. So I don't understand why it's opposition. He's building the same product right behind single-family residences in the same, right next to us. So I don't understand the opposition. He's building the same product type and putting up a 6-foot wooden fence. So you're asking us to put up an 8-foot masonry fence while he's building a 6-foot fence in the same situation. I don't understand that.
Well, I think we do understand that you've come to this situation somewhat late compared to others, and I suppose the explanation is when promises are made, promises ought to be kept.
Well, we understand that, but again, the development's up. They're going to have to tear down the fences and we'll build this. They're going to go without a fence for a while. It's going to be intrusive to these residents.
Mr. Meisterstrom,
It's not as easy as there's nobody there and we put up a masonry fence. This is going to be very intrusive to these folks.
Okay.
With them tearing down this fence and us having to come up with a masonry.
Excuse me, Mr. Meisterstrom, were you aware of the condition of the site plan when you purchased the property?
We're not saying we won't do what's required, but we came in here because it's a logical request to ask, hey, the fence is already built. It's going to, it's going to, I don't know where these 30, because everybody we talked to actually backs to this subdivision that we're building there. We've had majority favorable votes, so these negative votes are coming from people that don't back to the actual townhomes we're building, the duplexes we're building.
So you're saying that the map is not correct?
It's correct. I'm saying a lot of the opposition that they're stating, you guys are stating, I'd like to hear the addresses that are in opposition, because there are not a lot of the folks that own the properties directly backing our property.
So Monarch Homes is not one of those?
Monarch Homes is.
But, okay, so I'm confused.
It's the red on the west side.
Okay.
I think if I can speak, I think we might compare some
You'll be given an opportunity when this is finished. Any other questions from Mr.
So just for me to understand correctly, if you were given the ability to put up the wooden fences and you said you needed to put it on the boundary lines, but you stated that residents already have fences on the boundary line, so would that just eliminate you having the ability to have to put up a wooden fence?
No.
Is that what we're saying?
They're on the western boundary, there's no fence. They've already got the side fences in between their lots, and they got the posts ready for somebody to put up. They put posts up ready for a wooden fence. They were planning on putting up a wooden fence in the back, but since they know we're going through this motion right now, they've left it to see, because we've said, well, we would pay for that to put up the rear fence.
What about the southern part?
Side, there's all but 2 lots that the wooden fence is already there. Those homes have been built already.
So you wouldn't have to put them there?
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, we'd be replacing an existing fence that's already there.
But you do understand what the city states as far as the UDC?
Absolutely.
Say that again. Say that again, Ms. Pam.
I'm sorry?
Say that one more time.
I asked him, did he understand that what the city stated pertaining to the UDC?
The UDC requirement?
The requirement.
Yes. Yeah, because what he's requesting is not...
It's not
would not be
compliant.
able to be approved anyways.
Yeah. So it's kind of like null and void.
I'd like to understand the UDC better. Because you guys have such area.
It's never been mentioned before.
It's never been mentioned to us previously. And they've had DRC meetings with
We've had 4 meetings on it.
Hold on a second. If we're gonna do this decently and in order, we'll speak individually. So, any other questions for this witness right now?
My question is back to the red map, the red line map. Is you do understand that 24 or 22 of the 25 lots there, 22 of the 24 are against this. You're saying that you've spoken to these people on the western boundary and they're not against it, but yet they wrote into the city and protested against this.
I said Monarch Homes.
I'm speaking to all the people on the western boundary. Okay. Every one of them are against it, but you intimated they weren't.
I'm going by conversations.
Okay, we're going by the facts and the letters received by the cities of western boundary. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, they've submitted something different than what they've told us, and that's news to us, right?
Thank you for your...
That's a road. That's a road. We submitted everything.
Okay, and then that's more lots.
All of them are against it too. All of them. Any other questions?
Don't go away. Thank you for your time and presence. The gentleman back here is very eager to speak. Which one of you is going to do this? This gentleman. State your name and address for the record.
Eric Williams, and I'm the general contractor helping with the development. And I've done a lot of the legwork on this. So to talk about the 22 lots on the west side, They're owned by one entity. So to say that they all rode in opposition, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. What I don't agree with is I spoke to Austin Taylor on site out there, and he was in support of wooden fences down that west property line, and obviously us supplementing the cost of it. Because they were in they've got 4 homes under construction right now that they've got fences up in order for them to get people into them. Well, I understand that. What's also is so unprecedented about this is you won't find another scenario like this in the city of Tyler, where there's proposed to have an 8-foot masonry wall separating residential from residential that I'm aware of. Especially in this area, where just to the south, Nix is building multi-story duplexes that back up to his own wind farms. And in the northwest corner, you have duplexes, single story, which are large, that again are separated from wind farms with a 6-foot wood fence. You know, I know this happened years ago, and there's different people involved now, and that's why we're bringing it to the table. We understand what was there. We're trying to get it changed back to what logically seems to make sense. We can't go tear down all the people on the south. We can't go tear their fences down. I don't know how you're going to get that done. Maybe someone from the city goes and tells them tear your fence down so we can come and build, you know, some type of masonry wall in between. I also spoke with Mr. Nix. We thought that there wasn't this big, large opposition except for understanding the HOA. And there's one HOA right there that owns all of the lots except for the ones that Monarch Home seems to take down as they construct their spec homes. Small spec homes. They take the lots down as they build them. So you didn't have 22 owners right with opposition. We're here to be a good neighbor. We're here to put a nice screen wall up. The buildings that these guys are putting out there, they're all masonry. They're beautiful. They're high-end. Cut 2-car garages. I mean, we want it to be nice, but it's hard to hold us to a completely different standard than what we're doing in the rest of the city of Tyler. I've been building this city for a long time. I don't understand. That just didn't quite pass the smell test for us.
Thank you for your time and presence. Any questions for this witness? If not, again, thank you. I have a George J. Keeney, sorry, Mr. Keeney.
My name is George Keeney. I live at 2815 Roy Road, Tyler. I'm here today about the fencing in connection to the Villa Rosa, and I have about 642 feet on my property line on my east side, which borders with the Villa Rosa development. I have 408 feet on the back side of my property. 50 feet of it borders the Villa Rosa, and the remainder borders with the Gwen Farm Estates. A little bit about the history. 2004, the City Council had awarded an 8-foot brick wall be constructed on those 2 lengths of my property. And 2015 is changed to 8-foot wooden fence, and that's where it's has to it since then. With this new proposal here, it doesn't have to do with any of my fence or on, except for where it ties in to the back part of my property. At that point, I guess Villa Rosa is asking for a 6-foot wooden fence. Currently, I guess it's stands the original 8-foot brick wall is what they want to change to a 6-foot wooden fence. In my opinion, a 6-foot wooden fence would not go along with the nomenclature of the existing fence, which is 8 foot at that point. Now, on this back line of my property, coming from what would be the southeast corner, for 50 feet, the Villa Rosa was supposed to have built their part of the 8-foot wooden fence. It still has not been built after all this time. And along the line, the east line of my property that borders with them, which is 642 feet, they've built an 8-foot wooden fence, all except for the bottom 205 feet, which nothing's been done about that. Somebody wants to drive into the Villa Rosa there, they just have to hop the curb and they can come on into my property along that 205 feet. In the back, it's the same story right now, that between the 50 feet and the remaining 300 some odd feet, I have no protection at all until they build a fence, decide to build a fence. I wanted to point out that in 2015, Mrs. Guthrie, who is Assistant City Manager, wrote me an email and about the fencing and such. And basically, what she said, I can quote her here. The City Council felt that a 6-foot fence was inadequate, but that an 8-foot wooden fence, privacy fence, coupled with landscape buffer would provide an adequate transitional element. What I'm asking for, when you asked me if I'm for or against this part of the fence that you're talking about today, it's kind of like, yeah, I'd be all for if they decide to do an 8-foot brick fence, and I'd be all for if they decide to do an 8-foot wooden fence, but I'm not for a 6-foot wooden fence. It wouldn't be compatible to the existing fence back there. And so right now we're kind of exposed. Our property is just shy of 6 acres, and we're exposed on the front end there for 205 feet, and we're exposed on the back end for most of the 408 feet. Anybody can just walk on and drive on anytime they want, you know. So none of this fencing has been done. I do have a photograph. I don't know if we can put it. This is a photograph covering the 50 feet that the fence in question would tie into. It will show the 8-foot wooden fence to the right. It ends there, it doesn't make the 90-degree turn, and it's supposed to come in 50 feet to just where the corner of that shed is. That's where the fence in question right now from brick to wood would start and go south there. And at that point, it's only dividing Gwen Farm Estates from Villa Rosa. The only attachment it has to me is it attaches to the fence at that corner there. The fence that's not been put up yet. And anyway, that's pretty much the story. That's my 2 cents, so to speak. And I have to apologize for anything that was said about this beforehand. I'm having a terrible time hearing.
We appreciate your time and presence and the comments. Any questions for comments for this gentleman? Again, thank you for being here. John McKinney. Mr. McKinney. Esther Pennington. You just state your name and address for the record.
Esther Pennington, 3008 Gwen Farms Road, Gwen Estates, Tyler, Texas. My husband and I purchased property in the beautiful city of Tyler, running from hurricanes in Louisiana a couple of years ago. And we found Gwen Estates to be a perfect place to live. We purchased our home in 2020, and we were told at the time that there would be we knew the Villa Rosa property was behind us. We were told that there would be an 8-foot brick fence constructed before construction began. Now, I don't know if anybody can enlighten me on that, but we were told before construction. Well, construction has already begun by this company. They're building, and there's no wooden fence, no brick fence, nothing. And our property, as well as five other homes on the south end, literally connect to their property. And the 6-foot fence, I can look right over it and see the whole construction site. And I think there are going to be approximately 32 duplexes, which will probably be a lengthy construction endeavor with all that goes with construction. We were there when they put in the roads, the infrastructure for and we knew that was going to happen, and we dealt with all that goes with that. But we thought when they began the construction on the townhomes, we would have an 8-foot brick fence. There are already 6-foot wooden fences along that property. They belong to all the homeowners. So he's talking about tearing down the fences, tear them down and put me an 8-foot brick fence. That's what was promised. And from what I understand, it's been promised for quite a while. So we chose Tyler because of its infrastructure and what we thought to be a beautiful, well-managed city. And we trusted that, what was told to us when we bought our property would come to pass. So, we're just hoping somebody can help us with that.
Thank you. Any questions from Mrs. Pennington? From the commissioners? Any questions from the commissioners? Let me just assure you that this is a beautiful and well-run city. I have Lisa McCrary. Miss McCrary, is there a Lisa McCrary here? I'm not sure if there are others who signed up. Are there other persons here who? Nancy Wright. Nancy Wright. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nancy Wright. My address is 3100 New Copeland Road, Tyler, Texas. I'm here because I've been involved in this since it started, and I work with John McKinney and Austin Taylor and John Nix, and it's always been that when this was going to be sold to make it a multifamily development, that Mr. Nix and his father, who owned two estates, and the gentleman that is on the adjoining property, all would allow it to happen if there was going to be an 8-foot brick fence. And so now we're to this point, but while this property was being sold by Villa Rosa, who owned it, the appraiser that was doing the appraisal for the developer called me personally and talked to me and discussed the fence. And I know for a fact, I gave him John Nix's phone number, and I know for a fact I talked to Mr. Nix, and there was I didn't see any way that anybody would ever give up what was already given. And I know that John McKinney and Austin Taylor are building beautiful, large homes, I think, all on the west side of that property. And they do plan, the people who are going to buy those homes are being told that there's going to be an 8-foot brick fence. And so I have first-hand knowledge that this has been going on ever since that acreage was sold off. So I just want to, and I'm also a real estate broker, and I know that selling those houses with the multifamily behind it, brand new $400,000 houses, if they had an 8-foot brick fence built on Villa Rosa's property, not on Gwen Estates property, I don't know why we built on Gwen Estates property, that the people living in those beautiful large houses would be able to look outside and not have to see multifamily or the noise or have not the deed restrictions that are in Gwen Estates HOA. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Any questions for Nancy Wright? Thank you for your time and presence. Louis Christopher. Is there a Louis? Mr. Christopher, 9412 Sundials here and has chosen not to speak. Rebecca Valencia. Did I? Yes.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'm Rebecca Valencia. I live on 2982 Wind Farms Road. It's one of the houses in red on the west. No, wait, on the south. South. Thank you. My property backs up to the Villa Rosa property. And so I'd like to request that you please continue with the original agreement of the 8-foot brick fence, since our Gwen Estates neighbors have built and purchased property in good faith that the fence will be built. This will provide sound and visual protection to our community. Specifically, a brick fence over the wood will provide the sound protection and durability that we need, especially since the Villa Rosa property is at an incline to ours. So, as Esther was saying, when I look out my backyard, my home is the area that I look out to is in the living room and the kitchen, and it's where I spend the majority of my time. I have a 13-month-old, and we spend the majority of our time there, and our windows back up to the Villa Rosa property where we can see outside in our backyard, and we can see all of the construction because they are at an incline. So I think that 2 feet, the additional 2 feet, will make all the difference to our view when we look out there. So we'd appreciate it.
Thank you for your time and presence. Any questions for this witness?
What's the incline, Ms. Rebecca?
What is the...
Yeah, what's the...
I'm not sure. I just know that...
They're higher than you, though.
They're higher than us. Yes. I'm not sure what it would be.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that I've called on everyone who asked to speak. This gentleman, maybe. Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Austin Taylor, 6115 New Copeland, Suite 330. I am Monarch Homes. John McKinney and myself formed Monarch Homes to be able to create a place for Tyler residents to live. So this is my first rodeo, so I had to take some notes. I know it's going to be a Western shootout today, so here we go. I did meet with Eric, the contractor who spoke a little bit earlier. We met probably 3 or 4 months ago. At that time, I was kind of under the understanding when he approached me when we were doing this that the 6-foot fence had already been decided, and that's what they were doing, and they were moving forward with it. So if there was a conversation between him and I that was about the 6-foot fence, it was not in total agreement. I think when him and I once we got off the phone, I contacted John Nix and I contacted John McKinney. I said, hey, has something changed from the 6-foot variance? Because he wants to build a 6-foot fence and wants us to split with him. So the conversation did take place. There was no handshake, there was no agreement, there was no anything. I did want to kind of reverse a little bit. I do want to thank all the homeowners that showed up. I think they're the ones that are going to be left with the bill on this in the next year or two, whoever develops. And so I think their opposition speaks way more volumes than even me as a developer, and even the other party as a developer, because these are the people that, when we move on to another project, they're the ones that are going to be living there. So some of the notes that I took was, I have a 15-year background in oil and gas acquisitions before I started this development and building game. And one of the things that I learned in that time frame was how important due diligence is. And I think one of the most important things when you're doing your due diligence as a buyer is you have to see what expenses you're going to incur. And I think earlier the question was posed, did y'all know about this 8-foot fence? And I think the answer was yes. And so anytime that I would do a project, I'm going to build that cost into it. And I think that needs to be into account. I think John Nix drove John McKinney around and showed him various properties, and we basically fell in love with Hillside. We fell in love with the location of it, we fell in love with the design of it, and we fell in love with just the whole neighborhood and the whole area. In that, one of the questions was what's going to happen on the north boundary line. So there's woods there, and who knows if that's going to be developed one day. It possibly could. On the east side, we were told that a multifamily was going to go in, but it's been in place for a long time that there was going to be an 8-foot masonry fence. And so that kind of put our mind at ease that we would be able to keep our lot values with that in place. We've already started building. We're all the ones in red right here. This whole line right here, we have 4. We're about to build a parade home up top, so we'll be able to show that off. And then these 4 right here are going to be for sale. The back fences are open, obviously, because we are in conversation on what that's going to look like. So these down here are where we're going to start developing in the next year, and they'll be built and sold. So we are Monarch, and we do oppose this 6-foot wood fence. Any questions?
Any questions for this witness? Thank you for your time and presence, sir.
Thank you.
To the best of my knowledge, those are all the people that have signed up to speak. I may be wrong. Are there others? If not, the staff recommendation is to deny this request. Is there a motion?
I have a question. Sorry.
Sure.
I apologize. I have a question for city staff. Is it a requirement of the site plan that the fence be constructed before construction of the structures? I want to have that clarified, please.
So what the site plan says is that the fence is constructed at building permit for phase 2, which initially when this was done, it was all one large lot, which would have been essentially there's a CO for phase 2, which is the southern phase. I think maybe phase 3 as well. It's down here. Before that was complete, and there was a CO for that project or that phase, that the fence would be constructed. So with the with it being subdivided, that kind of changed the ability to build all the duplexes at once and then make sure the fence is in before any CO is issued for all of them. Where it currently stands is that there will not be any certificate of CO, certificate of occupancy or final inspections issued for any of the structures until there's the required wall constructed. So it won't be a case. It wouldn't be a case of duplex constructed and then essentially all of them built and then the last one has to build the wall. So the requirement right now is that the permits that have been issued, there won't be any final on those until the required wall, as it currently stands, is constructed.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one in phase 2, or whatever section we're talking about, before that first one gets a CO,
right?
The complete perimeter 8-foot masonry fence has to be completed.
Well,
is that not correct?
It would be before that specific unit is constructed.
Before the first one gets this first building gets the CO.
Before, essentially, it would be lot by lot. So before a duplex unit or a building has a CO.
So
the wall will be constructed.
Okay, so each duplex has to have the wall in place before they get a CO, and they can do that segmented all the way down.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, for that clarification. Is there a commissioner who would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we deny the request for the 6-foot tall wooden fence requested by the applicant for PD 23-002.
Second.
Any discussion? We're in the middle of a vote. All those, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item is denied. Next is C23-001 mixed properties. Ronnie.
This is a zone change request from R1A, single family residential district, to 3 different zonings: R1D, single family attached and detached residential district, RMF, multifamily residential district, and C2, general commercial district. This is a property that's located along Old Domain to the southeast of the city limits of Tyler. The applicant is requesting a zone change to develop the property with a mixture of single family to the north, and in the middle portion multi-family, and then to the south along the county road 2120, some commercial development. Let's look at the surrounding zoning of the property. The properties to the north is R1A, which is developed with single family homes, and the property to the east is PMF, and also some outside the city limits in this multi-family development and undeveloped properties. The properties to the east is R1B, and also developed with single family homes and some undeveloped property. The properties to the south is ETJ, and that's undeveloped. This would amend the future land use guide from single family medium low density, as it's zoned R1A now, to single family and single family attached in the north portion, and multi-family in the middle portion, and then general commercial to the south portion of it. This proposition, it's like a transition. If you could see the single family homes to the north, and it'll be transitioning to the attached homes, and then it'll transition to the multi-family, and then to the general commercial at the bottom. So this will be appropriate for the neighborhood. Out of the 21 notices that was sent, 1 was received in favor and 3 in opposition to the request, with a total percentage of 29.62. We also received 5 other notices outside the notification area. This would also require 3/4 majority vote of the city council in order for the item to get approved. The opposition was generally concerned that there was no adequate infrastructure to accommodate new development. They also talked about poor water pressure and poor road conditions existing in that area. There was also concern about traffic and the loss of vegetation to the in the vicinity. Staff has reviewed the request, and it does meet all the criteria of approval criteria for the UDC, and the staff recommends approval of the zone change from R1A to R1D, RMF, and C2.
Thank you. Any questions for Tharani?
Durrani, it does sit within the city limits, right?
Yes.
Ronnie, I had a question about, and I can't tell from the map. There's looks like there's a long dissecting line that hits the, looks like northwest corner. Is that like a pipeline, or is that a stub, like a street stub?
That's one of the main trunk lines to Lake Tyler.
Okay, that's the Lake Tyler
one of the larger
raw water that goes up to Golden Road. Okay,
I believe so.
okay.
Which will have to be in the easement.
Right.
Utility easement.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, because I saw the R1D layout, and it didn't connect there, but I just wanted to make sure that wasn't something that needed to be addressed. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Nix.
Hello again. This is a rarity. I didn't ask for the first one, so sorry about that. Yes, so this is a piece of property I bought in 2021, and we spent the last year working on how we wanted to transition and buffer to the properties to the north. As we transition down, as you may know, County Road 2120 has actually got a project that's been funded for design with the City of Tyler right now. Been approved by House Senate and approved by Council. It's with Half and Associates Engineering to widen that and add water line, upsize the water line. We put in an 8-inch water line down it as a city project a couple years ago to try to fix pressure, but take the 12-inch line all the way to Troop Highway and widen that to at least a 3-lane, so 2 with a turn, all the way from Troop Highway to Old Omen, which is one of the things that encouraged us as the city was widening and taking care of the traffic and water issues in this area. So we're going to start with a cul-de-sac on that north side. And a lot of that is just to magnify the buffer we're given to the neighborhood to the north. So in total, I gave you all the packets that we knocked on the doors of everybody in the notice area. So my wife and I on the 20th of January knocked on all those doors. Got to speak to 9 people face to face, and had a phone call the next day, and then actually had a phone call later with the gentleman that owns the large tract to the west. Actually, I haven't had a phone call with him. Left him a message, and he sent me an email the other day, which we'll talk about. But anyway, we really feel good about our design. We feel good about how we consider the area and the neighborhood. As we transition down in the packet, you can kind of go through there. And we showed examples of the houses we're going to build on those. Those houses are selling for anywhere from $375,000 to $430,000. These are not, insignificant structures. And then down to our townhomes and our condo neighborhoods. And we gave everybody pictures of actual buildings we're building on our own properties here in the city currently. And then down on the C2, you can look in that broader scope. There's actually a C2 in several places along County Road 2120. And as we're continuing off, because of the thoroughfare out to the lake, our goal there is basically RV, boat, and mini storage complexes, as well as leaving the corner for potentially a future gas station. So that's kind of our goal. In creating those buffers and creating those distance from the neighbors. The gentleman to the west, who says to be here, hopefully is Mr. Sampson, in his email response to my phone message basically said he would be against any rezoning that I proposed for that piece of property. So I didn't really spend a lot of time looking for solutions there until we got here and could have a conversation. Anyway, I have a significant investment in this area. I own basically everything behind Summerwood Apartments across the street. We've been developing there for about 3.5 years. And we've already got one of our townhome and condo projects in there, as well as a commercial tract and some little warehouses and stuff over there as well. So anyway, that's about it. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Nix?
Mr. Nix, any reason, or can you give us a reason why going with R1D rather than R1B? Because R1D allows attached and detached. So can you speak to that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I can actually. And we've talked on the zoning side, but basically it's side setbacks. So the side setbacks is the issue with it. Our lots that we've got for preliminary design there are actually about 20% bigger than R1B lots. So we're already achieving the lot size. The problem is R1B is 6 foot side setbacks and we really want to do 5.
Want to do 5?
Yeah. So absolutely a concession for that is R1B. The problem is we really need 5 foot. So everything else complies with R1B except for our side setbacks.
Okay.
So if you look at that, go through there on our proposed layout for the cul-de-sac, those lots are about 7,000 square feet. R1B minimums are 6,000.
Right.
So our average is about 7,000 square feet in there with a couple of lots. Well, they are R1A size, but they stretch across. They're all one line. Okay. And so,
yeah. What was the consensus from the neighbors when you walked the neighborhood?
The people we spoke to. We had great conversations with pretty much everybody I spoke to. The lady who called me the next thing, this is Weather. Her concern was water pressure. The neighborhood has had an issue with that. And in our designs, our preliminary designs with engineering, there really wasn't much we could do to aid that. There's a 12-inch line going all the way down Old Omen. There's an 8-inch line that the city recently tied in on 2120. Going back toward Troop. And like I said, with the project for the Shiloh extension over to Old Omen, that one has a 12-inch line in it as well. But I think that was her concern. And then Mr. Sampson's stated, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but he purchased his land in 2022. Said strongly against, we purchased the beauty and the wildlife in the area with our children, changing the zoning from R1A to R1D, RMF, and C2 would drastically impact the habitat for deer, foxes, and other animals that we regularly enjoy seeing on the property. Additionally, our property had a preliminary plat provided us showing 5 estate homes on over 10 acres, 10-acre lots, changing the subject property to a much greater density, the R1D as well as RMF, would be very detrimental to such future use on the property, is what he said. I contacted the gentleman that owned the land before me to ask if they had ever had something like that produced, and they were unaware. But doesn't mean it did. I never was aware of anything like that. And in the course from 2021, at the end of 2021 and at the beginning of 2022, we attempted to purchase easements from Mr. Hickey. We didn't want the land because it's kind of a hole that's really hard to develop. But we tried to purchase easements for him to tie in to water at Copeland Woods and kind of create a loop. And Mr. Hickey's price for those easements was pretty high. And I think he wanted $50,000 for one and $80,000 for another. And it just made more sense for us to spend money running all the water lines back to 2120 than buying those. So, but I do know that Mr. Hickey, who owned the land previously, and his realtors, we had those discussions with them that we were developing that land in 2021 and 2022, and they knew we owned it. So, and I mean, it's got my name on it, obviously. I'm trying to think of anything else. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from Mr. Nix? John, thanks for your time and presence. Are there other, Mr. Nix has referred to a letter from Mr. Sampson, and I think he sort of discussed what that was about, but as Mr. Sampson is here, we'd be glad to hear your comments.
And when I say my address, which address?
Whichever address you used to live in.
For my primary residence?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Robert Sampson. I live at 9 Blank.
Is it 9253 County Road 2120?
That is the subject, the West property. Let's see. 628 Honeysuckle Hollow, South Lake, Texas, 76092.
Okay.
Forgot the number. Yes, my wife and I purchased the 67.5 acres to the west of this property. Last year, we've been looking for additional land in the Tyler area to go out and enjoy with our children while we still can. We purchased this as a long-term investment. Our intention is never to change a thing on it. Our kids can do what they want with it whenever we're gone. So our expectation was 34 years. We could go enjoy that. When we were looking into it, I researched everything I could find around it. I did see that property was R1A, I believe, presently, which that's all right. That's what Chapel Woods is, and we were okay with that. The appraisal district actually still has an updated record showing our ownership of this property. I contacted them several times asking why, because actually I did not receive any notice about the zoning change. The notice I did receive was from neighbors in Chapel Woods. They asked if I knew anything about it. I said, no, I did not, so please send me the information. Mr. Nix did call me voicemail when I was at state, and at that point, I'd already received information from residents in Chapel Woods. We actually now own a house in Chapel Woods additionally. We purchased that in lieu of building a barn down along the 67.5 acres. A house came up that backed up to the property. We're like, that's going to be cheaper and easier than doing our barn. Let's buy that. All these things, the acquisition of the land, adding trails, adding fences, acquiring the house, not a single one of those would have been done had that property been zoned R1D. Let's see, R1D, R1F, and C2. We looked at multiple properties when they had zoning like that around that we didn't even consider. From that standpoint, we strongly oppose it. They can build houses on it, that's how it's zoned. But we aren't looking for anything more dense than what's already zoned. I think that's mainly what I wanted to say. I think mainly I can put that in the letter to the city and so everything is right.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Any questions from Mr. Sampson? Thank you for your time and presence. Are there others here who wish to speak on this item? If you come to the microphone, please.
My name is James Spears, 4013 Chapel Woods Boulevard. I ask the members' indulgence. My hearing aids are not interacting with your PA system well at all. So I've been trying to listen, but I haven't picked up everything people were saying. I have two concerns from my point of view and for all the people that live in Chapel Woods, east and Chapel Woods, directly north of this. I know that Mr. Nix talked about the water pressure. I won't go over that again, except it's a big concern for people that live in those areas, especially during the summertime when people are watering their yards. Water pressure can be pitiful. My other concern, which doesn't directly affect the property that Mr. Nix is, and that's County Road 2120. When you head south on Old Lowman Road, it's super, divided, 4 lanes. Once you turn to go west on County Road 2120, you're in a whole different world. It's 2-lane, it goes downhill and crosses a creek with a bridge that is washed out. It's not a bridge, it's a culvert that is washed out on numerous occasions. The road's been closed. You cross that and you head uphill, and 2-lane is extremely rough, potholes, it's been patched, repatched, steep drop-offs on each side until you cross the railroad tracks. Then you enter roads that are certainly much better shape. I don't know, since it's a county road, but it's kind of within the city limits, who's responsible for maintenance. But with the increased traffic, and it's already a lot of traffic going work hours and coming home from work, in all the construction, the number of new families that are going to move in, somebody needs to take a hard look. I talked to Councilman Westbrook. They said they were looking at straightening it, changing it, or something. But I think that is going to be a real bottleneck in the future. And that's what I wanted to cover.
We're grateful for your time and presence. Thank you for being here. Any questions for this gentleman?
Mr. Spears, where do you live? Where do you reside in regards to this tract? Okay. And if there were homes that backed up to your home, would that still be? Is that something that you still protest?
Well, here's my wife and I's point of view on this. We don't have a privacy fence. We just look out in the woods from our backyard. We would certainly love to keep that. I mean, we put a corn feeder on our post on our backyard. Deer would come up. So we hate to see it go. But I understand Mr. Nitz owns a property. He has a right to pursue development of that property. He has given us a diagram that there's going to be a cul-de-sac that's going to be behind our property, and it's going to be single housing. So other than that, I can't say object other than I don't want to lose my backyard looking into the woods. I wish it wouldn't happen, but I have no valid reason for saying he shouldn't do this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Spears.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and presence. Are there others who wish to? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your time. My name is Lloyd Rebelke. I reside at 3976 Chapel Woods Boulevard. And I would just like to reiterate the problem with water pressure. We have been fighting this. We've lived there 7 years, and we're kind of at the end of the chain. And until that water pressure gets fixed, I don't know how you can put new homes or anything in there that are just going to tax it even more. So my suggestion would be that problem needs to be fixed before you go and tax anything else. And with the development that's been built on the other side of Old Oman Road, that's just add even more issues without fixing that original issue. So what you're doing is you're compounding the issues that we already face today. So my suggestion again would be that needs to be addressed by either the developer or somebody else before I think this project could move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Are there others? If not, the staff recommendation is to approve. Any motion? Mr. Nichols?
A comment on the water pressure, because it's come up for quite some time, is that the city engineering will address that before any of the further developments allowed in that. So it's part of the process. Just to let y'all know that that would be part of the process. I'm not getting out of my lane here, so it's part of the process. So.
No, I'm not going to get out of my lane.
Yes, sir, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Nichols, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Not all at once.
Ladies first.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Z23-001.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve this zoning change. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item's approved. Thanks to all those people who showed up on this item. Next is Z22077, Marceline Perez Soto. Ronnie?
Mr. Chairman, hang on just a second.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself.
Great. The chairman will try to remember to call you back. Actually, unless there's objection, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. All right, the Planning and Zoning Commission is back in session after a brief recess. Mr. Landis has recused himself and will not participate in this next item. Ronnie?
This is a zone change request from AR, Adaptive Reuse District, to RPO, Restricted Professional Office District. This is a property that's located along South Wine Avenue. This is the northwest intersection of South Wine and Rusk Street. The applicant is requesting the zone change to allow for a larger sign on the property. Right now, AR allows for a maximum of 8 square feet monument sign, and the applicant is requesting for 32 square feet, which would be allowed in RPO and not in AR. Looking at the surrounding zoning, property to the north and south is zoned AR and are developed with the house and also an attorney's office to the south. The properties to the west and east are zoned for single family, R1B, and are developed with single family homes. This would not be inconsistent with the future land use guides, would amend from single family medium low density to office. That's the property. That's the proposal that applicant has been wanting, so they're requesting the RPO rezoning. I want to mention some history about this property as well. In 1987, the city initiated, let me go back to the zoning map. The city initiated a zone change along South Wine Street in order to preserve the characteristics of the neighborhood. At that time, some of the houses were R3, some of the houses were RPO, and some of them were AR. They were all rezoned. It was city initiated to just preserve the character and reuse the older homes and have limited commercial usage rather than an RPO or more commercial usage, since that, with Wine Street, the properties were completely developing. So the city initiated that. In this zone change, RPO would be in contrary to the development and detract from the residential characteristic of it, even though the applicant had mentioned to me that they are not planning to do anything with the property itself. It's just purely for the signage aspect of it. The city staff did talk to them about the possibility of going through a variance process, and that would give them a larger signage, and if they prove the conditions that are met for the ZBA. so they could pursue that route instead of going through a zone change process. They are aware of that other venue as well. Out of the 20 notices that was sent, none was received in favor and one in opposition to the request with a protest calculation of 8.63. I did speak to the neighbor and they said they would not be opposed to the larger sign, but they would be opposed to the zone change aspect of it because they said all of the homes, there are all homes along that area, and I did tell them that that would be the staff recommendation as well. Staff has performed a technical review of this request, and staff recommends at this time denial of this zone change.
Thank you, Thrani. Any questions for Thrani?
All right, can you tell if there are other small businesses that are up and down Vine Street, and if they have similar size signage, the 8 square foot size, or if they are primarily homes? I think you've already stated they're primarily homes, but are there other instances in close proximity?
The property to the south has a larger sign, probably that was a carryover, like a non-conforming sign.
Okay.
And the properties to the north, there is a kind of a daycare to the north, not adjacent to it, but right there to the north, and I'm not sure what kind of signage they have. That's all I could think of so right now.
Okay. So the sign across the street is larger than what's allowed by zoning, right?
Right now, yes, they are.
Is it the same size as what this person is proposing, or similar?
Yes.
Similar in size.
Yes.
So they're wanting to match what their neighbor has.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that what Ronnie discussed was that the possibility of going to get a variance for that purpose, taking into consideration some of the other properties in the area. So one of the conditions that we ask for a variance is whether a zone change would accomplish the same, essentially allow what's being requested. And typically, sometimes the answer is yes, that you could get a zone change. However, it may have a unintended consequence or effect that doesn't really serve the purpose of going that route. So I think in this case that would be true, that if there was a variance requested, that you'd be looking at whether can you do a zone change like was being requested today. Yes, however, it could have some of those other unintended consequences in terms of looking at the intent of why this area was zone AR. It hasn't really changed over. We haven't had any requests for redevelopment, so really the intent of having an AR is still in place. And so that's why we've discussed with the applicant perhaps pursuing another avenue to accomplish what they want to do.
Because AR would allow residential use and also commercial use where RPO would not.
AR will allow, yes, AR will allow the residential and then that light office, light office use. RPO will allow for some additional office uses and some light commercial uses too, like a coffee shop or things like that. From a development standpoint, it would allow more of the front yard to be paved over, so it can change kind of the aesthetic. I mean, the applicant doesn't plan to do that, but if it is RPO, then that can change the character of that area. So I haven't seen really a trend to go that way. So at this point, a zone change is for that purpose of a signage. Perhaps there's another way to do that and still be, maintaining the intent of it being AR.
Yeah. So the staff's recommendation is not based solely upon the non-conformance. It's based upon the vehicle that should be used to achieve the goal.
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly one way to express it. I don't have any cards on this item. Are there persons here who wishes to speak on this item, the applicant here or something? You just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Marceline Perez, and I live at 715 South Line. And I'm just looking for the best solution to increase visibility to my business. I have no plans to change the visible part of the house, but as you well heard, my property is split. Half of it is RPO and half of it is not. The RPO side, which is where the parking side is where the residents are, and I'm not doing anything that way where I could. And in the front, where my business is, I'm not able to, so it's kind of backwards, the way I see it, you know. The street there is 35 mile an hour, 30, 35, and people tell me all the time, my clients, that they can't find my office. And I just want a better visual. I want to put something nice in there. I'm not looking to change the property in any way. I just want a better visibility and to find the best way to do this.
And you understand that there are you have alternatives.
Yes, I do understand.
Any questions for this witness?
Ms. Perez, okay. So you own both parcels, one RPO, one AR. The one that is RPO is a residential property, and then the AR is your commercial business. Is that okay? Then I'm confused.
The one the side that's RPO is where the parking lot is.
Where the parking lot is.
Yes.
Okay.
And I just want the property to be consistent if possible.
Yeah. Okay. Across.
It is a business.
Yes. Okay.
So what we think happened there was this property used to be two separate lots, and when back in 87 or mid 80s, when they did the AR, they looked at the properties that had structures on them because they wanted to assume that a property that doesn't have a structure on it needs to be AR because you're not reusing any the vacant land. So I would think if we did that now, if we could go back in time, we probably would have looked at kind of ownership and looked at making it consistent. But initially, I think we think the property was RPO in the first place, and it was downzoned to AR, but only the part that had the house on it. So that's why there's an RPO on half the property. It was a different property at that time.
So it was RPO previously, and then AR.
It was downzoned to AR.
Downzoned to AR along Vine Street.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you for your time and presence. You're welcome. Are there others here who wish to speak on this item? If not, the staff recommendation is to deny the zoning request. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we deny item Z22-077.
Is there a second? I second the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. I think that was 4 to 1. So the motion, the zoning request is denied, but I'm sure you've heard that you have options. Next is Z22075 North Chase Development.
This is a zone change request from agriculture AG to C1, light commercial, PMXD, mixed use, and
Johnson here. He's not coming back. I'm sorry, Thorani. Just for the record, John's not coming back. He has other responsibilities, but we still have a quorum.
This is a zone change request from AG Agricultural to C1, PMXD1, and R1B, that's light commercial, mixed use, and R1B single family. This is a property that's located at the intersection of Broadway Avenue and then the loop of 323. The applicant is requesting a zone change to develop the property with a mixture of uses, the single-family, multifamily, and commercial development. Let's look at the surrounding zoning. The property is to the north, AG, and is also outside the city limits and is undeveloped. To the east is R1B, agriculture, and also outside the city limits, and it has single-family homes too. The property is to the south, agricultural, and now it's also outside the city limits and is undeveloped. Properties to the west is RMF, R1D, AG, and C1, and it has a mixture of uses. Looking at the single future land use guide, this is consistent with the future land use guide, identifies the area as mixed-use center. That's the area, that's the proposal. It has the C2 to the corner of the Broadway loop, and then also has the PMXD1 portion right here, and all of these are R1B proposal. This proposed use would be consistent with the plan for the area, and it's a mixed use. It's also in the north end. It will add more houses to the north end. The applicant has submitted site narrative for the PMXD use to that's in the north. They have some permitted uses and then some prohibited uses. Mostly everything is inconsistent with the UDC, Unified Development Code, for PMXD1 uses, except for some of the uses in PMXD1 that they have prohibited. That's the area. Out of the 11 notices that was sent, 1 was received in favor and none in opposition to the request, and staff recommends approval of the zone change from AG to R1D, C1, and PMXD1 with the site narrative.
All right, any questions for Throne? Mr. Thompson?
Chairman, Commissioner, I'm just here for questions.
Oh, come on. Come up to the microphone.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad knee.
You don't get to see very often, so come back.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioner. My name is Ted Thompson. I live at 3351 Cascade Court, Unit 304. I'm just here for if y'all have any questions. We purchased this property back in 2008 and have since put 2 tax credit apartments and 1 senior community on this property. And with the new development with the Tyler Economic Development Council, the purchase of 419 acres along I-20, we think it's time now to try to, as we bring in jobs and companies, be able to have affordable housing for those, workers, managers and, staff. And so, me and my team has worked very diligent on trying to maximize this density, and so we're proposing 224 unit subdivision. We've already zoned the multifamily a while back, and is in current working right now to get that developed. That's a kind of 12-month process, and right now we're just waiting to get y'all approval on the subdivision and council approval so we can get started. It all kind of falling in line because the city of Tyler is now fixing to complete a water system at the corner of Broadway and the Loop, and it's going to be running down east of the Loop down to 14 out to John Sofu to supply the water out there. And so they will be, in compliance with all, EPA regulations and things. So now is the time, and things are looking real good for North Tyler. It's been a long fight, and it's been a long wait, but things. If you drive through North Tyler now, you see a different Tyler. A lot of the old infield lots are being filled. Wherever a home can be built is being built. We're currently on 32nd Street. The city worked with us on that project, and we're currently fixing to build 7 directly across from the Glass Recreation Center. There's another subdivision just down the street from us there, but putting in, I think, 39 lots. TISD and implemental of tearing down the old Dogan school, middle school, and hopefully the plans for that in the future is to take that area and get it back to the community, build homes around there where kids could be able to play and then walk to school, because I think with obesity and things, the way our health is, it's kind of nice to see kids walking to school, and so I'm just happy and proud to see North Tower kind of catching up with the rest of the town. So I'm here for any questions you might have on the subject.
Any questions from Mr. Thompson? Are there others here who wish to speak on this item? If not, is there a motion?
Chairman, I make a motion we approve item Z22-075.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve this item. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item's approved. Next is Z22-00. I'm sorry. C22-004. Sylvia and Perez and Jose Lopez.
I'm going to do this one. This is a request for a thoroughfare closure. This is an unimproved portion of Roberts Avenue. This is just west of West Dobbs Street and South Glenwood. As you can see here, it's actually there to see right here. The street was never constructed. There is a water line in the right-of-way that will need to be dedicated as an easement with the replat, but the street's not constructed. You can see it goes further west. It's not constructed there and doesn't intend to be constructed. Looks like that was the initial route for that street, but West Dobbs Street was built instead, and I think that's what happened. And so you can see this does go into the yard of the applicant, and they are seeking to close it to be able to bring it into their property. And with that, they'll need to do a replat within 6 months of approval, and also dedicate a utility line for the water service. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval of this closure.
Great, thank you. Any questions for city staff? If not, Mr. Lopez, Ms. Perez, would you like to speak? All right, well, let the record show that Sylvia Perez and Jose Lopez, 907 South Glenwood Boulevard, were here and available for questions. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Motion that we approve C22-004.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve this item. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item's approved. Good luck with your project. And next, Texas Z22-076, Texas Bank.
This is a zone change request from Agricultural District to C1 Light Commercial District to allow for the development of a office structure or office building for Texas Bank. The property is located along Old Jacksonville Highway. The surrounding properties are commercial. To the north, currently, there's a church to the south, south and east, and then to the west is currently outside the city limits. This is consistent with the future land use guide, showing that it's mixed use center. As you can see here, the applicant plans to use this property and the property to the north for the development. And of the notices that were sent, 0 were returned in favor, 4 in opposition to the request, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions for city staff? Would you like to speak?
No, sir. I should have a question. Anybody has a question? I'm John Chesley.
Yeah.
And I'm here representing Texas Bank. And I'm only here to have any questions of what we're doing.
John, just state your name and address for the record. And,
John Chesley.
And your address is?
My address is 10121 Sugar Creek, Lamp, Texas, 75762.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from Mr. Chesley?
No questions.
If not, the staff recommendation is to approve this item. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Z22-076.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve this item. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item's approved. Sorry you had to wait all day.
I'm glad you gave us a bathroom record.
Seriously.
Next is ZA 23-001, the Unified Development Code.
This is an amendment to the Unified Development Code to update the UDC as it relates to annexations. There's a text reference to December 31st, 2000. Well, this to update it to 2002. This is where we do a 20-year annexation ordinance to make an uncontestable finding that any property annexed in the city in the past 20 years is valid, and so it's kind of a reaffirmation and helps prevent any legal challenges to anything in the past 20 years. In the review, this is the map showing everything in orange is what was in the city in 2002 as of December 31st, and then the current city limits is the blue lines around that. There were no annexations in 2002, and so this map looks like it did last year when we did the same thing. So no changes to the map, but we are updating the code to reflect 2002 instead of 2001. Staff recommends approval of this UDC amendment.
Any questions for city staff? If not, other persons here who wish to speak on this item? If not, the staff recommendation is to approve. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve ZA 23-001.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve this item. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item's approved. Next, we have a plat. Is F22160 Warwick Estates. God bless you. Is that an approval?
Yes.
Anything to say about it?
Yes. This is a four-lot subdivision in the ETJ. This is actually near the outermost limits of the ETJ near White House. The purpose of the plat is to create or subdivide one tract into 4 lots. As you can see, there's currently structures on 3 of the properties, and this is the proposed plat. The applicant is requesting a variance to the UDC, a section of the UDC that would require the extension of the end of Patrick Path into the development. It would require that the applicant provide a turnaround or extend the street into the subdivision. The applicants asked for requested a variance to that, taking into consideration that the properties are currently developed and that it's in the ETJ, not in the city limits. Staff has reviewed the request for the plat and the variance, and given the location of the property, after having talked to the county about what they require in this situation, and then also taking into account how many lots are served by Patrick's Path, staff recommends approval of the requested variance with the condition that the owner provide a turnaround easement at the end of that street, so that there could be in an emergency some way to turn around at the end of that street. The applicant has indicated that their client is agreeable to that, and so staff recommends approval of the plat with that requirement.
All right. Are the persons here like to speak on F22-160? If not, the staff recommendation is to approve. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve F22-160 with the stated variance, with the condition that the applicant provide a turnaround easement at the end of Patrick's Path sufficient to provide emergency turnaround access.
Sure, second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we have consent plats Group A, F23003, P23001, F23007, F23001. Are the persons here who wish to speak on any of those plats for or against? Yes, sir. Just come to the microphone.
Chris Dumas with MTR Engineers, 12770 Cimarron Path, Suite 100, San Antonio, Texas, 78249. Here just to answer questions. Did you have any regarding Hope subdivision?
In which plat are you?
It's P23001 and F23006 for the Hope subdivision, preliminary and final class.
Came here from San Antonio?
I was told to come here from San Antonio, but it's a welcome break.
Wonderful.
Welcome break.
It's a long drive.
A lot of interesting conversations early on. Zoning's always fun.
These, we appreciate your appearance. Any questions for this gentleman? If not, the staff recommendation is to approve all these consent plats.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, go ahead, ladies. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve consent plats Group A.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve consent plats Group A. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next is consent plats Group B, and the staff recommendation is to deny all of these. Is that correct? Still, Kyle?
Yes, sir. The following plats do not currently meet the approval criteria, so staff recommends disapproval of these plats.
F23-002, F23-010, F23-012. Any discussion? If not, the staff recommendation is to deny. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we deny consent plats Group B.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to deny consent plats Group B. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those plats are denied. The commission will stand in recess for as long as it takes to walk across the street.